What a great kick. Oh, and Chad Townsend plays on. Plays to the whistle. Kicks away for Valentine Holmes. Cronulla's in again. Wow. Chad Townsend, brilliant.
Yes, what's going on, fam? Welcome back to another episode of the Chad Townsend Show. I'll be your host, Chad Townsend, and today I have a very special guest. But before I get into that, I want to quickly say that today's podcast is proudly sponsored by Cronulla Beer Co., your newest local craft beer. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm actually holding a can of it right now. This is the first ever can off the production line. It is an absolute beautiful thing to look at. But that leads me into today's guest, and that is my best mate and business partner, Goody. Bruz, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having us, Chatty.
Mate, big chat today. Been a big 12 months. Like I said, Goody and we are business partners alongside a few others in Cronulla Beer Co., which has just recently launched in the last 2 months. But, mate, let's firstly start, I guess, a bit of our relationship. You know, we've known each other for, 25 years?
Something, yeah. We both would have been 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Back in the day, hustling on the mean streets of Yarrawarra.
We grew up together. We lived around the corner from each other. We played football together at the same local team, and we went to school together. We played school footy. Our parents are friends. But it has been quite a journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been crazy. I guess, the last 25 years, but I guess this last 12 months in particular, everything that's happened around, COVID restrictions,
yep,
how it's affected your lifestyle as a professional athlete. But I guess, looking at the silver lining of it in some sort of positive aspects, probably potentially wasn't going to be able to give us the foot in the door with the new business had we not have had this extra time to allocate, I guess.
100%. I think, as bad as COVID's been this year, and a lot of people, all of us have been affected in some way, it's also created opportunity. And I think smart people have really, knuckled down and really gravitated towards the opportunity that, has been provided with more time is what you're getting at.
Yeah, a really interesting way that I was sort of forced to look at it, and it wasn't just from these circumstances of during COVID, but ever in your life where you're kind of forced to move a bit slower and focus on things that truly are important to you. It's really interesting what you can potentially get out of that time.
Definitely, 100% agree. All right, let's get into it, guys. Well, as I mentioned, Goody, myself, we are co-owners of Cronulla Beer Co. alongside a few others, and I want to tell you guys a bit of the story today. Basically, it's been a 12-month journey up until today of getting this business, this company off the ground. But I want to take it back, Goody. This is probably 12 months to the day, actually. Now, as I mentioned before, Goody, his family, we are pretty close family friends, and I invited Goody and his parents over for just a few drinks and an afternoon cheese platter. And Goody was on crutches at the time, and he came in and he said to me, "I need to talk to you about something." And I was like, "All right." And then his parents pretty much walked in the door straight away, but we had a pretty quiet afternoon. And then all I wanted to know was what's he got to tell me, because we used to chat. We chat each other about everything, and then anyway, we had the cheese platter and we had a few drinks, and then Goody said to me he was ducking down to next door, and I was like to Marissa, "Dale, do you mind if I go down and speak to Goody?" And then, you were at next door, and it just kind of happened that you were sitting at the head of the table, and I went over, there was a seat next to you, and I sat down. And if you want to go on to the next bit of the story about...
Yeah, you were sort of nudging me going, "So what do you got to talk about?"
It's one of those things where I wanted to know.
Yeah, and I was like, for starters, like, I felt like a bit of a dog because I didn't know that you were coming down to meet the boys as well. And I was like, I probably should have just given you a ride with mum and dad in the car as well. But as we were sitting there having a chat, and he said, "So what's this that you wanted to chat about?" And I said, kind of a bit apprehensively as well, saying, I've got this idea that me and one of the boys have been chatting about, and I wanted to sort of fill you in on to kind of get your thoughts on it, kind of with the idea that you were hoping that you'd be interested in potentially being a part of it, and that was to start our own craft beer company, you know, and the name immediately was what I gravitated towards, and I think was kind of maybe what was the bit of a light bulb moment for yourself. Cronulla Beer Co., you know, being in the Sutherland Shire here, and craft beer still a pretty emerging kind of scene.
Definitely. 100%. And I remember, and it takes me back to, you know, like I said, Goody and I, we've got a long history. We're best mates. And, you know, we grew up in the 90s. We're 90s kids. We grew up with things like Rob Dyrdek Fantasy Factory and Rob and Big, and used to, you know, try and, you know, talk about ideas about, you know, one day doing our own business. We used to go for coffee pretty much once a week and talk
All
about,
the time,
you know,
yeah.
maybe, you know, doing something fitness or gym or something like that, you know, clothing. And Goody mentions this to me, mate, Chatty, what do you think of Cronulla Beer Co? And I looked at him, and straight away just tingles went up my neck, and I was like, mate, I love it. I love the name, and I just wanted to get into it straight away. My mind is just ticking over, and being, you know, a professional athlete, I've always wanted to have a side business or have a side hustle where something I can, you know, sort of start. And I've thought about a number of ideas, but this one, when Goody just mentioned it to me, I was like, mate, I'm on board. Let's take this by the horns and let's run with it. But what do we do?
Yeah, like how do we even get started? Because it's like a complete, you know, new industry to us.
Yep.
You know, yourself being an athlete, have spent, you know, quite a bit of time studying as well, financial planning and things like that. Yep. Myself and two of our other business partners, you know, both in the fitness industry, and our brewer, Tim, you know, as we mentioned on our podcast, he's a photographer by trade. So we'd probably poured a few beers and drank plenty of them between us. But as far as getting a startup like that off the ground, like, there was a lot of conversations that needed to be had. There was a lot of, I guess, support needed from the right people to try to shun us in the right direction if we were ever going to make anything of this.
Definitely, 100%. And as I mentioned, for people that might know, we're at next door at Cronulla, which is pretty much right on the beach, an absolute amazing location. They do really good, you know, breakfast, really good food, and they're known for their Sunday sessions. And it was a Sunday that we're sitting there, right? And we'll get into a bit later on, but it just turns to happen to be that, you know, just under 12 months later, we're actually sitting at next door drinking our own beer.
Yeah, it's pretty outrageous.
At next door.
It's a bit of a trip, like, and definitely the novelty still hasn't worn off when I'm walking in with a couple of cases to see the Aloosh boys, or see Brookie or something like that, and be like, far out, I can't believe this is actually happening, eh? It's pretty funny.
Oh, I love it. So the next day, the first thing we basically wanted to do was register the business name.
Yeah.
Wanted to make sure that the name was protected, because essentially, like, that was our brand, and that was pretty much what we were going to market with.
Well, yeah, we had to kind of remain as excited as we were about the project. You probably remember we felt the need to stay pretty tight-lipped about it for a while.
A long time.
And then the more conversations that we had about, you said it well, like, oh, you know, I've always wanted to have the side hustle and something you can sink your teeth into a bit. But then the more that we looked into it and started to learn more about the opportunity that we had, it was like, far out, boys. Like, we have to do this. Like, we're going to have to. And it's no, you know, golden goose egg or anything like that. There's going to be a lot of time that goes into it. But I think that's been one of the most enjoyable things for me this year, is how grateful I am to have been able to spend that time with you boys as well, because It's just been super rewarding. You know, the business, while we're now transactional and in a few venues and things like that, we're so far away from, you know, turning it into an actual money-making venture. But it's our time spent in it it's been rewarding. You know, it's really satisfying to see something start from nothing and evolve into something tangible.
100%. And the thing that I'm really so thankful for is the fact that, you know, I get to talk to my best mate on the phone every single day, and we're like, there's a few, you know, fires that we have to put out and things like that, and as I'm sure there is with every business, but the fact that we get to talk about it, man, it's like, that's incredible.
I think as well, I was kind of thinking on my way here as well, like, had we not have had this project to work on, like, we still do our best to sort of be in contact with each other every other week, but it definitely has, brought our relationship closer together this year, because with everything going on with yourself at the moment, 2 kids, another one on the way, footy restrictions this year, me owning another business, like it's difficult as you get older to get that time with your mates,
100%.
It's been sick.
And I think that's why, it was so important with assembling a team to get everything done, which I think has been tremendous. Like the fact that we've got like a core group, a team that's just, everyone's sort of gravitated towards their own roles and what they're sort of good at.
And we're still sort of establishing,
Definitely.
I guess, that also as well. And to my limited, still what I would say limited knowledge within the business world, I to me, it really is about assembling a team, and assembling a team basically means putting the right players in the right positions, and that's what we're working out.
Yep.
But to see that, even in the, the fire of just trying to keep up with like the Christmas hype and stuff like that at the moment, like we're getting there and gravitating closer towards certain tasks than others may be, but we're getting it done and having fun along the way, which is the main thing.
100%. So, all right, we went from idea to registering the business name, and then obviously with starting a business, there's a few things that need to happen, and that sort of cued on to probably one of the things we needed to do early on was, our logo and our website, and then our following that, I guess, comes our branding. And one thing we spoke about was we wanted to source all of our work locally.
100%.
We wanted to give local people, the job of helping us create essentially what we're going to move forward with. So if you want to, I guess, elaborate a little bit on our logo or essentially our branding and how that came about.
Well, absolutely, because, we haven't had the opportunity to brew our beer locally. We're probably a ways away from being able to have our own production site here locally in the Sutherland Shire.
Which is long term. We want a brewery in the
That's
Shire.
That's what we're going to have.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But so it was really important to us to have a product that is a representation of the area here that's going to be consumed by locals. Well, we want to support other locals, young, small business owners as well, to see of how they can help us get this off the ground. Design, logos, things like that, something that I love. And, I could fancy myself and say that I've got an eye for design. I'm not a designer though. Like I don't do Photoshop. I don't do any of that tech sort of stuff at all. So, a good mate of mine, Nick Larder, was the first guy that I reached out to that sort of put the idea like in sort of a can format, like the concept of like what we're trying to think. And originally, even if you chuck us that can, like that was like one of the, do you remember that the original conversations, like within the first 48 hours, we were talking about, what Cronulla is about is like,
what would we put on the can?
Yeah.
What would represent Cronulla? What do you think?
You want to look at the can and you want to think Cronulla.
Definitely.
So we thought the sand of our beaches and that sort of beach, like coastal lifestyle and the wave on the can each time that we will change the variety of the beer to, develop our core range is going to be a different pastel colour of zinc that a lot of the time can be, compared to the colour of some of our surf clubs and things like that down on the coast as well, which is pretty cool. So we're stoked with how this one turned out. So Nick helped us get that like onto a sort of canned format. But as for the logo, the brand, the text, the unique text that you see in the Cronulla Beer Co. was we reached out to Jake Savas from Savvy Signs, and he was unreal in sort of taking this to the next level and in using his skill set to create a completely unique text. Like Jake does some amazing work like for different companies, sign writing locally and all over Sydney, but the thing that caught my eye that he does really cool is the fruit shop text. Like peaches, $2.99 or something like that. And that's essentially what the text is now, like a bit more sort of whipped out and with some little highlights in it and things like that. But bringing that together, the wording of our name, our brand has basically essentially turned into our logo as well, which should be hopefully, the reoccurring sort of consistent theme in a lot of our marketing and stuff like that moving forward. So
definitely. And that's one thing again, which is one thing I really love, because when you think about fruit shop And if you look closely on the can, and if you're watching on YouTube right now, I'll lift it up and I'll show you. But yeah, to me, like the fruit shop text, it screams local. Like, you know, you got your local fruit and veg shop, and again, they're a small business, usually family run, and they're the people that we wanted to really support. So I guess after we had the logo and sort of can design, I remember you coming around here and we were actually drawing cans, and we drew like a little pilot, a little surf club hut on there, and we're like, what are we going to put on there? And, so we ended up designing the can, which we're so incredibly happy with. The next step, I guess, was we needed a website. And we were like, I reckon I probably could have made the website, but there's no way I could have made it to the quality that it is today. So again, we reached out to, a local business, Reese Carter and Ryan Ellal and Cass, and they done an incredible job of creating our website, which is exactly what we wanted, isn't it?
Yeah, and something that, I think will continue to evolve as, seasons change, even you bring in more products, your website that is a complete digital representation of your brand has to be forever changing. But they did such an incredible job. And I think, those initial sort of catch-ups that you had with them was, paramount in them kind of understanding like I guess you would sort of say ethos of the brand.
Yep, definitely. And they were after inspiration, and, you flick through a few websites and things that you really like. And we just wanted it to be local. Local, slick.
Less is more.
Less is more, professional photos. And that, again, will go down to like our branding. But let's quickly touch on, I guess, like the crew, our crew. There's obviously you, myself, and a few others. And as you mentioned, like, I'm a professional athlete. 3 of the boys are personal trainers, and Tim, who's a professional photographer. But quickly, I just want to talk about Tim, because Tim's been brought in, mate, and has been Tim. For you guys who might not know Tim yet, you'll probably see him all over across our social media. He's our head brewer. He's the one who's created this recipe and done an incredible job. And he has been the jack of all trades, hasn't he?
Full on linchpin. If we didn't have Timmy, I don't know how we would have been able to find someone else that would have been able to fill a comparable role.
Yep.
And just to be in that early sort of startup phase. And I guess as well, again, Timmy affected from COVID, having
no
that
weddings,
extra time as well.
Yep.
A big part of his yearly trade is wedding photography and travel photography as well. So not being able to do that, he really sunk his teeth in. And a lot of the evolved into not just the brew side of things, but having incredible content, photos at our disposal all the time. But even having 13 years in design experience has really helped us refine that can to get it where it was as well.
Definitely.
Because with design stuff, meeting with different companies, and they're needing, your artwork put into a certain template to then be printed or whatever.
Pantones and things like that.
Oh, Tim, that's just his bread and butter, where that would have been, yourself or me having to probably learn a complete new skill set to try and get that there, where Tim's just like all over it.
Yep, definitely. I guess, guys, I want to give you a little bit of a background on Timmy. And Timmy, like I said, he's our brewer, but his main job is photography, and he's been brewing in his garage for
years now.
10, a long time basically, and brewing from home has always been a hobby for Tim. And then once Tim sort of came on in an official capacity, and then we started moving forward, he had this recipe that he'd sort of tweaked a few times, and then that sort of came from, and I'll just quickly grab one of these cans.
What's the date? 10th of the 4th.
So again, if you're watching on YouTube, and I've got these cans in front of me, right? And so along the way within our business, we had Tim researching, refining the recipe. So he'd brew 2 beers at a time, then he'd give them out to friends and family, or we all would, and then we'd get feedback on which one that you think would be better. And then say it was V1 or V2, we'd say, look, I like V2 better, V2's better. Then he'd tweak V2 and make 2 other ones, up to maybe 6.
He probably brewed the same beer essentially about 7 or 8 times.
Yep.
And like the final recipe that we went for wasn't too dissimilar to one of the original ones, but little sort of refinements that were made to get it to exactly where we were. And I guess it's one thing I can only sort of empathise with it being in Tim's position, that how nervous at times he would have been getting feedback from people.
Yeah.
The awesome thing about Timmy, he's got absolutely zero ego and just wanted to always make the best product and be able to be confident, in himself that, we've got the product right. I think back to, obviously you weren't able to be there because you're still in the bubble, but we had our first tasting night when we were confident that we got the recipe to where we needed to. We had about 13 of the boys. I wouldn't have been that many, obviously, because of restrictions. But we had a few of the boys around to Tim's place, and we were hosting like a blind tasting.
Yep.
And there was about 6 different beers that we had, and all similar style beers to ours, like a tropical style pale ale, XPA type beers. And we were really nervous to put our beer up against those other well-established beers and how it would rank. So essentially you'd be trying the beer, writing down what you do or don't like about it, and then of the 6 that you tried, where that would rate, where that would rank, and you wouldn't know at all what beer that you were drinking. So Tim's sort of idea on it was that if we don't come like dead last, that means like we've done all right. So, but still gives you the opportunity to get feedback and improve on it. But we actually came in second overall by 1 point. The beer that beat us was Filter's XPA, which is an incredible beer that's only recently set up their big brew house in Sydney. And we were lucky enough to have the company of one of the head brewers from Malt Shovel there on the day, and he actually voted our beer was the best on the night.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
Oh, Timmy was so gassed up by it, and we just finally knew then we've got a beer that people are potentially going to really enjoy and want to continue to purchase or consume. So
from there, it essentially went from Tim's brew in his backyard, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'm holding up these cans, and I've actually dated them because one day I'm going to put them in our brewery and we can look back. And this is the first ever one. It's on the 6th of March.
Wow.
2020, and that is the 10th of April, and they're obviously empty now, but they're the first samples that we were obviously absolutely frothing on.
They'll be on the Cronulla Beer Co Museum.
But so once we nailed the recipe, boom, we've got the recipe, it's done. Now it's time to scale. So we go from Timmy's garage to brewing what? How?
So you're brewing 20 or 40 litres at a time, and then you step up, like if you're going commercial, your minimum would be like 500 litres or something like that, which is a drastic step from brewing in your garage.
Yep.
But if you're going to produce on enough scale to actually get it out there and get some traction, our first commercial brew was 6,000 litres. So
we went from 20 litres in Tim's garage
to 60,000 litres.
To 6,000 litres in a brewery.
Yeah, and to put that into perspective, like brewing 20 litres at a time that's less than half a normal keg. And our first commercial batch of beer, it was 54 kegs and 212 cases. Like it was it's a big lot,
And we were like, how much do we do? Because we had an option to do less, and we were like, let's just go for it. Let's just go. Let's take the biggest one we can, and it turned out to be the best idea we've probably made so far.
Absolutely, and I think that really put us under the pump. That it's like we had to generate some sort of audience. We had to sort of spread awareness and people understand that there was this new product coming. And as much as we were getting around to mates and family friends and things like that to try our samples of the pilot batches, no one really knew what it was. So we were relying on people having enough interest to purchase a new product that they hadn't really tried before.
Yeah.
But I guess in liaising with a lot of other local venues as well, and probably I guess in particular, Feros Group, having the opportunity in such an early stage of a startup to be like, we're going to give you guys a crack. We like that, you're just young guys doing just that.
They've been incredible.
Like it's been amazing for us, to be able to get that out there and be able to be, highly consumed in such amazing venues here locally.
Definitely. And I'll just echo those thoughts because, Public House, the Botanical, Tarrant Point Pub, the Prince.
Like the Prince, man, like in
the Shire, all these.
In the first week of February, me and Tim were sitting there like where he just got back from being in Iceland with Gemma and Ivy for almost a whole month away doing some photo work, but just basically their family holiday. To then I'd messaged him when he was away to get home, hey, I want to have a chat with you about something, sitting in this booth at the Prince Hotel saying, hey, what do you think about this? To then within 12 months to be that being the first venue to start pouring our beer. It was like, it is a bit of a trip. Yeah.
It's so good though. And it tells our story, and it's like, man, we sat here like 12 months ago. We sat at next door. We sat at the Prince talking about it. Less than 12 months later, it's on tap. It's in a tin, in the fridge. It's on the menu. Like, to see it on the menu at establishments, that is like a moment where it just hits you, and it's like, wow. I quickly want to touch on probably some inspiration we got throughout the year, which was from some epic guys on the Gold Coast who do amazing beer, and that's the Black Hops Brewery. And we found this booklet that they made online. One of the boys printed it all off and got it for us, and we all made sure that we read through it. And they were really transparent with, you know, their business and how they did things, and they were super inspirational to us, weren't they?
Well, even their name, Black Hops, it's kind of like the play on words of Black Ops. Like they call themselves like the least covert beer operation, and it was almost like a start to finish tutorial of what it would take to start an independent beer company. And as we read through it, it was so exciting and it was so raw and genuine. But on the same note, it was like, wow, boys, like we've got a lot of work on our hands. Like we haven't even touched on the licensing stuff yet either as well. Like we had to employ a licensing solicitor, and I had to become the licensee to get this off the ground. And to do
licensee training.
Yeah, and then licensee training to be like a legitimate, you know, commercial company. Like it was just so not in our ballpark really. But again, Princess Fiona Myatt, our licensing solicitor that just helped us navigate through this so much, was just, you know, so helpful to us, so patient, you know, of young guys coming into a pretty foreign industry. Yeah,
really thankful to her, because obviously, you know, I guess applying for the type of license that we needed to, the forms, you know, how long we'd have to wait, it was obviously a little bit daunting for us, and we were kind of happy to sort of, you know, put it to her, and she handled it all and just flick us what we needed to do and sign and return to her.
Yeah, well, a couple of weeks or just before engaging Fiona, we were already a couple of weeks in to applying for the wrong license. Like it's so difficult to navigate through it. So anyone out there that's like started an independent company, like beer company on their own, like hats off to you. I don't know how you've managed to do it, because between the five of us plus a licensing solicitor, I feel like we've just managed to scrape through.
You just touched on the licensee training, and actually I want to tell a quick story. So obviously starting a craft beer company, you know, I and all the boys, we wanted to do our RSA, make sure we had our responsible service of alcohol, which is obviously a certificate in New South Wales. And anyway, I'm doing mine online, and I got the link from, I think it was you, Goody, flicked me the link, and I'm doing online, answering all these questions, obviously, like, you know, what are signs of intoxication? How do you ask someone to leave? What's the fine if someone's, you know, on the premises? Just as if I was a glassy at Northies.
Or pulling beers at any bar.
At a pub. Yeah. And anyway, so I do all the online assessment, and it's like multiple choice, and then you have to get like, you know, 10 out of 10 to pass into the next module. And I pass all the modules, and anyway, I'm up to the last bit, which is like the face-to-face interview assessment, and it's over Zoom. And this guy comes onto Zoom, and he asks me this. He first of all checks my name, and then didn't know that I played footy. And he asked me this random question. I was like, oh man, I'm fully just shat myself, because he didn't say that he was going to ask this question. I had all these questions answered, ready to go. And he was like, oh, and I was like, oh, I don't know. He's like, mate, well, you need to know. And I was like, oh, all right, give me a second. So I'm just sitting here thinking, going, come on. Anyway, I got the question right, and I answered it, and he moved on to the assessment. And then anyway, he's like, so, all right, mate, well, you know, we didn't get off to the best start, but, you know, how old are you? Like, you know, what are you doing? You're 18? You're 19? And I was like,
Because he thinks that you probably are just trying to become a glassy or something.
Because he thinks I'm just becoming a glassy down the pub just while I go to university or something like that.
Yeah, far out. I mean, it was so funny. I think I got interviewed by the same guy for my licensee training, and I was having to like be a part of like role play scenarios.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
he had to play that like he was a pissed guy in the pub, and I'm having to kick him out. Like, but you've got to provide the right protocol and your house policy and stuff like that. It was so intense.
Yeah, 100%. And just quickly as well, I'll touch on like I guess obviously we spoke at the top of the show about like COVID and everything, and I was stuck in the NRL bubble for a long time, which was obviously very hard, but we did all of our meetings on Zoom.
Yeah.
That was pretty tough, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I guess, some people resonate with that style of learning or communication better with others, but we didn't really have a choice. Like, we had to do what we could to meet up every week, sometimes for half an hour or up to more tin 90 minutes to get through what we had to and try and just do this whole thing via correspondence. And, it was painstakingly, brutal at times to just try and be motivated to do stuff where there wasn't any real connection at all. We got into it, to be working on this project together and hanging out more and drinking beers and stuff like that. And we'd been going months, like literally months, and we'd had one face to face with you back in early February or something like that.
Just before the COVID happened. But all right, let's get stuck into, I guess, lessons learned or, mistakes along the way, because in business and for us, it hasn't been smooth sailing. We've obviously come through our challenges as much as everyone else, but one of probably the biggest challenges that we had was, our can design and the palette of our can, and one thing as well we've been learning is to work with MOQs, which is minimum order quantity, and obviously us being a small startup, having to sometimes branch out and go, how, there's MOQs at these bigger businesses, obviously, they supply well-established companies. That's been a lesson for us, hasn't it?
Oh, hugely. Like, if we're talking about the cans in particular, we sort of were trying to look into a few different options whether we're going to get completely printed cans like that, or if we're looking at more just like a label that in sort of like the packaging process of the product, a label kind of gets slapped and wrapped around the can. Like, it's an option,
which we didn't like.
We didn't like it. We just sort of wanted to decide that if we're going to do it, like,
do it right.
We want to do it right. We want to have it looking as slick as possible from the get-go. And there was a couple of different companies that we could go with. And the one that we went with was great and was really helpful in sort of giving us feedback in the design process when we turned our artwork into the sort of template that they needed. So upon giving them that artwork and getting it approved, they sent us a couple of prototypes for cans. So we since have now known of speaking to other brewers and things like that it's not that unique of a scenario that what happened to us, but us being in the position we were, I thought the shit was going to sink before we'd even left the dock, like far out, that we signed off on these prototypes with a few minimal changes that we had to make. And if it wasn't for us requesting some of those final print cans to get sent to us before they were sent to the brewery for packaging, we would have rocked up on packaging day to see 50,000 of the cans that we had got printed that were not in alliance at all with what our
Pantones were.
What our Pantones were and what we'd sort of approved. So it was some pretty intense conversations for about a week, and especially, being the age that we are in a completely still foreign industry and having to go and meet with these guys. I remember sitting in the car with Timmy before we walked into this site, and I was like, like, are you ready for this? Like, we knew it was going to be like such a flex, like that we had to get in there and be like, look, it's not acceptable, and we're not, holding anyone personally accountable, but like in these early stages of our startup, the brand, like the identity of the can.
Super important.
It's everything, you know, and we were joking about it when we were going back and forth, and we were trying to sort of convince ourselves initially that the can was all right. The boys are going, it's dead set Parramatta Beer Co. because the can was like yellow and royal blue.
Yeah.
But to their credit, the guys that we did print with came through and ended up like just being so supportive and said, look, you know, put our hand up. It's not to the quality that we, you know, go by. And we want to run these for you guys at cost and make sure that we have it there for you by your filling day. So I think we ended up receiving the product like within less than a week of the date that we had to fill the can. So it was getting pretty tight, but we managed to pull it off.
We got there. Just quickly before I move into like the brew day and the packaging day, you actually got one of our tap decals sitting right next to you. If you want to show up to the camera,
these ones here,
for those of you watching on YouTube again.
Really stoked, really proud of how these turned out. And I guess I should mention as well, Jax and the guys at 1-800-4PROMO locally here as well have helped us a lot with our design stuff. These tap decals, they're just incredibly done. Like it's about like 5mm acrylic that's like 3D printed. They're so sick.
So these things obviously sit on the head of the tap at the pub when you walk up to the bar.
And we wouldn't, again, a thing that we wouldn't have known, but how much influence one of these things has over what you're going to purchase when you walk to the bar is massive. So we wanted to have something obviously that aligned with what our can looks like, but just something sick that's going to stand out as well and kind of be pretty unique when sitting up against, you know, your other bigger brands, your Great Northerns, your VBs, your Bolters and things like that as well.
Yep, 100%. I love it when we're so happy again with how it turned out. But I touched on, you know, the brew day and the packaging today. So essentially we've got our recipe now and we need to scale. We've done, I guess, a tour of a lot of facilities about where we want to contract brew, and we ended up deciding on the Rocks, and Scotty there, the head guy, has been absolutely tremendous, been so helpful, and AD and Zach and all the boys there have been incredible, haven't they?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's been a big inspiration to us as well, as like having not even met them before, like what you said, the guys from Black Hops, like it felt like we were being supported in this venture that it made it.
We hadn't even met them.
We hadn't even met them, but with Scotty and Zach and 80, like they just welcomed us, and you know, I think that's one of the biggest gifts that you can give to someone is literally just believing in them that you could do it, and they believed in us, you know. And
Definitely.
I should mention as well, Pat and Joel from Willie the Boatman, you know, they were one of the first guys that we even met with before the Rocks about potentially contracting out of there, which we will be sort of continuing to do a bit of work with them in the future, and just been tremendous support, so positive, so passionate, so enthusiastic about the project that we're like from the get-go that you guys will and can do this.
Definitely. And that has been one thing I've really found out about this craft beer industry since we've sort of got in, is this: the people are so friendly, they offer advice, so helpful. Like we've been walking in with pretty much our eyes wide open and just asking questions left, right and centre. And to hear them be so helpful has really been beneficial for us, you know, starting up. All right, I want to talk about packaging today. So brew day's done, the beer's gone in, our recipe's gone in. Packaging day, which was probably my favourite day we've had so far in the business, because
100%. And if anyone hasn't seen it yet, they'll have to have a watch of Zane's video that he did.
Yes.
Zane
So
Wilson.
check out our social media at Cronulla Beer Co. There's a video that our videographer made, Zane Wilson from Wilson Visuals. He done this incredible video of us, like, you know, playing guitar and playing the drums,
just
and
having fun,
just having
in the
fun.
brewery, and it tells the story really well from like the start of a brew day to your packaging day, and then getting it out for delivery. And it was just, yeah, it was really cool how he sort of put it all together to sort of tell that part of the story.
So packaging day was the day where our beer got put into our can, and this can that I'm holding up is the first can that came off the production line. So
the first one, yeah.
The very first one. So the beer would come down, the cans would go in, the beer would go in the cans, come down the conveyor belt, put in a pack tech, which is basically where the beers are in a 6-pack, come down again the conveyor belt where the beers would then be put into our case, our carton, then through a tape machine down the trolley and then put onto a pallet. And then that afternoon, our beers, which we were, again, personally delivering to our local establishments, bars, restaurants, in the Shire. And again, I want to say a huge shout out to all these people, because the local restaurants and pubs and bars, etc., have been so supportive, haven't they?
I don't want to miss anyone, but the Aloosh boys from next door in Sea Level, Harry and Mario from CC Babcock, Nathan Miranda Pub, Simon Johnson, that's just supported us from the early days with the Ferros Group.
Yep.
There's
Loftus Bottle Shop,
Loftus
Bottle
Bottle Shop.
O'Brien's.
Yeah, there's been guys there, Croydon Lane,
Yep.
Dougie at Cronulla Kitchen,
Yep. Even Nulla who are just reopening.
Just about to reopen, refit, and it just said to us before while they weren't even open, said when we reopen, when we relaunch, we want you guys to be a part of it. And it's just been so awesome to have that support. Some people hadn't even tasted the beer, let alone seen our price list, and we're like, we want to give you guys the opportunity, which is so cool.
So we had the packaging day, and we had a lot of cases assigned to our wholesale partners. We also had a number of cases assigned to our online sales, which basically sold out within 6 hours, I think it was.
Yeah.
And that's probably been one of the hardest things for us to do, has been to keep up with the demand, because currently, as we sit here right now, our cases, our online portion of our business is actually sold out at the moment. And we're getting a lot of inquiries about people, asking when the beer can be available for online purchase again. So again, we just want to say, thank you for your patience. We are going to have some more online.
Probably likely next week. We'll let
before Christmas.
Know when we'll have available online purchase again.
You will be able to get some before Christmas, and again, we thank you for your patience. But that again took us into probably once the deliveries were done that day. I think it was a Friday. We were pretty happy, and then the first pour, which happened at the Prince, the first ever time our beer went into a schooner glass, and again, it's at the Prince where where you and Timmy essentially sat down and had a conversation about the beer company. Again, it just shows relevance to our story.
Yeah, so all the boys are there, guards, Timmy, Wags, yourself are there for a beer that afternoon, and just to, I guess, draw attention to, again, like how much of an incredible and supportive industry this is. The first beer of ours that I ever had at that pub that day, I shared with Kane from Sunday Road, who they're like making incredible beers here in the Shire. Their local brewery, if you haven't gone and checked it out yet, in Kirrawee, Sunday Road, make amazing beers. And he was like, mate, I've been following you on socials. Like, obviously I knew this was coming. Of course I'm going to come down and have a beer with you guys and support you. And I was just like, dude, that is such epic behaviour, eh? Like,
again, another legend in the industry.
Yeah.
And there's so many of them.
Yeah.
So that was real successful, the first day, and then we sort of did like a bit of a pub crawl around the few pubs that had them, and a lot of our mates came and they were having a good time, and they, I guess that's when it kind of our brand, or our all the hard work we'd done so far in getting I guess our social media and our marketing and our branding on point, was where people were starting to take photos, and the word was starting to get out there on social media. Like you said, Brad from Sunday Road said, I've been following you guys from social media. The other day, a few of the boys and myself were actually playing golf at Cronulla Golf Club, and we were in the practice nets just warming up before we were about to tee off. And one of these guys said, to his mate, have you had that Cronulla beer yet? And I'm sitting there, my ears just perk up, and I'm like, I'm not going to say anything right now. I'm just going to listen to see what he says. And his mate goes, nah, mate, I haven't yet. How is it? He's like, mate, it's outstanding. So good.
Good that.
And I was like, oh my, all right, well, I'm going to say something now.
Yeah.
if he said to his mate, nah, it's freaking shit,
mate.
I would have been like, oh, I'm
Absolutely
not going to,
horrendous.
I'm not going to
Imagine
say,
that.
better not say anything. But yeah, I went over just before we teed off. I was like, mate, how you going, mate? Like, my name's Chad, and myself and a few of the boys here, we actually own the beer company. And he's like, oh, really? Oh, how you going, Chad? He recognised me. And I was like, yeah, mate. So, you enjoyed it? He's like, mate, yeah, really enjoyed it. And I was like, oh, where'd you get it? And he's like, I had it on tap at Miranda Pub. And I was like, oh, mate, like, look, just want to say, like, really thankful for your support. And, I really, really appreciate it. He's like, mate, yeah, no worries, mate. So,
So
have
good,
a good
eh?
round. And that was
That's epic.
that was epic. But, I'll touch on social media quickly and then maybe a bit of merchandise before we finish up. But, social media these days in 2020 is a massive part of business and something we've really wanted to focus on, especially with our website, our blogs, our vlogs, we've got a Cronulla Beer Chat podcast. We wanted to be someone who puts out a lot of content and has a lot of fun with our brand.
Yeah, and you have to have presence. And I think it's, pretty easy to come up with content when you're sort of marketing something like a product like beer.
Yep.
But the reality is, I feel across all industries at the moment, whether it be you building your own personal brand or if you're in the fitness industry, if you have a cafe or a restaurant, like you need to be visible. Like it's the first thing that you do. Like if you hear about a new restaurant or cafe or bar that you want to visit, or even so much if you were looking to engage somebody for landscaping services or building or something.
You
like
want to see
that.
the work they've done.
And it's probably more relevant these days that you would go straight to Instagram or Facebook and search their handle before even the likes of Google, really. And so we knew how important that was to start building a bit of an audience. And I guess what we've always said is tell our story. We haven't wanted to shy away from the fact that we don't really know what we're doing. We're having fun. We're just young guys having a crack that, love beer, love where we come from and see how we can sort of bring that all together.
Definitely. And it has been super fun. I think we've done such an incredible job, and that's probably leads me into a little bit about my role within the business. And I'll probably get into it a little bit more maybe on another podcast, but obviously within the bubble, like I was, restricted with a lot of the work I could have done, but essentially, I guess the branding and the content is something that, I gravitate towards too. And obviously having things like my own podcast and having my own YouTube channel and something that I really wanted to push was, that again, as you just said, was to echo, tell the story about, how we created, because people essentially they resonate to the story.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I think we've done an incredible job with that. So,
especially if it's a local independent product as
yeah,
well.
we are independent as well, by the way. On the back of the can, you'll see certified independent. So it's something that's really is important to us.
Yeah. And I think that, a lot of, speaking, to go back to some of the obstacles that we've, faced so far and probably will continue to face so far, is that when you are getting inquiries come from larger venues and things like that, it's so common for these bigger venues to be heavily contracted by some of the bigger players in the game and not have a lot of allowance of tap space for small independent companies. So any venue out there that gives us a crack, gives us the opportunity to supply them, is really, really doing the right thing by small local business, because they could be getting, still pretty good product for probably a lot more of a marginalised price than what you're buying a boutique craft beer for.
Definitely. And I think that's what I guess COVID has done to us all, as well, as it really has echoed, it's good to support local, support local business. I think that has really come along in 2020. Would you agree?
100%. And, my girlfriend, Ellie, she owns a restaurant, as you know, and having to be shut the entire time through COVID, as my gym was shut as well. That was pretty hard on us.
Yeah.
And I think coming out the back end of that and knowing, how grateful you should be just to have a job has not only, relit the fire to be back at work again, but just sort of I guess, mutual respect that you have for anyone in small business that's grinding, that you just want to support them. So, eat out, get your coffee from small coffee shops and things like that. And you should do that regularly, because a lot of people, these small businesses, that's what they're doing to, put food on the table for their families.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. All right, big fella. Let's we might wrap it up there, eh?
Awesome.
That was an epic chat. Thank you very much for listening today, guys. Look, if you want to jump on our website, we do have some merchandise actually available too. We've got a few shirts. We've got some hats coming before Christmas.
Got some really cool merch coming.
We've got some really cool merch coming. We've got a really new slogan we want to share with you guys, which is, I think, going to be an absolute ripper.
Sick.
But yeah, make sure you can check us out, www.cronullabeerco.com.au. You can also check out our social media at Cronulla Beer Co. today. Goody, thanks very much for coming on, brother.
Thanks so much. And if you want a sample, probably going to have to get down to your local.
Yeah. So we are planning to restock our online store before Christmas. So make sure you stay tuned to our social media. Don't forget to check out the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Stay 100. Let's get it. Yo.